All right. Well, hi there, Worldview class. It is I, it's Dr. Bruce. I'm going to talk to you guys for a little while today about kind of setting the stage for monism and New Age pantheism in pop culture. And just a reminder, just for calendar sake, so we can align ourselves properly. Remember, there's not a scheduled class for Friday because it's Good Friday, and so the monism, New Age pantheism, and pop culture components for us this week will actually be divided between, Wednesday, April 8th and Monday, April 13th. So that's where we're going with this. Just a couple of things. I've been receiving your, your worldview and film reviews and going through. I'm trying to really keep up to speed with those because there's just so much going on with the transition to remote learning. I don't want to get behind, so I've been reading through those very, very consistently and grading them and trying to get them all entered so that I don't fall behind quickly, which would be very easy to do with all the craziness right now. So I think I'm pretty well up to speed as far as I can tell, and it would help if you guys also do your due diligence here and remain abreast of everything that has been assigned. And remember that you have to keep submitting things on those dates on the updated calendar for April 2020, the remote calendar. So that's where we are. I think we're exactly where we should be. We're right where I want to be as far as the topics, although I, of course, would as always, I would very much prefer to be with you guys in our classroom and be able to interact with you. The computer interaction is something I'm getting used to, I guess, but it's certainly not what I'm most comfortable with. And I really prefer to be with my students and be able to interact with them and have that environment be person to person. It makes more sense to me. It's just what I love doing. But as far as I can tell, this is going along reasonably well. So the group, by the way, the group video, the 5-minute video segments that our group did with this topic is dealing with the film Avatar by James Cameron, which I jokingly typically refer to as a New Age pantheist version of Dances with Wolves. And if you're not familiar with the film Dances with Wolves, maybe you should go watch it and then watch Avatar, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It seems very much, in fact, as if James Cameron and some of his screenwriters just rolled the plot line on over and then created it in a sci-fi format. But it is what it is. I think there's definite value in the film. Avatar is a good film. Especially for us, it's a good film to recognize the pantheistic frameworks that are brought to the forefront through pop culture. So our group members for monism, New Age pantheism, they're going to be submitting those 5-minute segments, and I will of course post those on Converge once I have them all for you. Okay. Just a couple of reminders. So we got to go back through and look at a few things regarding monism or Eastern Orthodox pantheism versus New Age, the New Age movement in the West. So remember, going back to Gautama, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, the idea for Eastern Orthodox monism, right, revolves around the Four Noble Truths. We see these here as Siddhartha defined them anyway. And this is repetition, I realize that. So we've gone through this in class back in February, in fact. So it's been about 8.5, 9 weeks, maybe something like that, maybe 8 weeks, I guess. But I just don't think it would be wise to wade through this without just a quick reminder. So the Four Noble Truths, right? The idea that life involves these basic elements. Life brings suffering. Suffering is caused by attachment. cessation of suffering is attainable as long as we get on that eightfold path to truth and we begin to remove ourselves from the attachments in our lives. And that eightfold path involves a lot of different things. You see on the screen here, just kind of a reminder of that. And ultimately, the goal is to reach nirvana, where ostensibly, anyway, the argument is that if you're able to attain nirvana, you are reabsorbed into that universal essence supposedly from which we all come. That's the orthodox approach to Buddhism, sometimes referred to as Eastern monism. And the association there, remember if we talked through this as far as how, look up one more thing here. I guess I will just stick on that slide for the moment. So remember we had our discussion about this notion of, how does one accomplish this separation and how does one eventually achieve this element of nirvana. And remember, a lot of this revolves around the self. So from Eastern monism, that's the more orthodox component of pantheism that would be associated with Buddhism in particular, the idea becomes that our individual, the individual self, our individuality is actually the reason for all the trauma and the destruction in the world. That is the argument from an Orthodox Buddhist perspective. And so the job then becomes, how can we de-emphasize and rid ourselves of the self in order to somehow reconnect with the universal spiritual notions or essence that we all ostensibly come from. And one of the major reasons, or one of the major mechanisms, I should say, for de-emphasizing the self involves connection, or sometimes typically referred to simply as attachment. And that's the component I want to focus on today, because I want to differentiate today and Monday. I want to differentiate a lot between more orthodox versions of monism that we would find in Buddhism, for instance. I want to differentiate between those and what in the West has been identified as New Age belief. These are things we've gone through. You guys have some background here, so this is not going to be entirely new. It's going to be a good reminder for us. But I want to make some associations. So first of all, I posted some links that you'll see. I posted some links on Converge. The first one is, as always, is a bit of a joke. The existential comics piece, and the one I posted has Buddha sitting down with David Hume, an Enlightenment philosopher from Scotland, and David Hume is one of typically regarded as a pragmatic philosopher, and so you'll see the joking interaction between those two guys there in the comic. I hope you'll appreciate it for what it is. It's not meant to be the end-all observation. It's meant to be a tongue-in-cheek sort of a thing, but I think you'll enjoy it, maybe get a little bit of a chuckle from it. But the other pieces that I posted are also important for us. So I want to just bring your attention to them. Again, remember that your fellow students, some of your student colleagues in the class are going to be posting on Avatar. Be looking for their presentation. I do not want to steal their thunder. I want to let them say what they're going to say about Avatar, bringing to light the notions of pantheism. Hold on a second. I have to scold my 19-year-old cat who's eating. Hey, Misty. Hey, don't eat that off the ground. I don't even know what that is. Okay? All right. Cats, what are you gonna do, huh? All right, so she's a 19-year-old cat too. It's not like I'm training her for the first time, but she should know better than to just, have a new meal off the floor, but whatever. Okay, that was a bit of an odd moment in our class time, but back to the matter at hand. I want to talk briefly about how Orthodox Buddhism has often been represented in pop culture. And of course, there are some real basic things we've talked about before, including the first clip that I posted on Converge for April the 8th is actually a clip that I had shown you in class back in February. It is a clip from Star Wars Episode 4, where Obi-Wan is sitting and he is explaining to a very young Luke Skywalker, he's explaining the Force. And I think in that clip, you have to start at about the 2-minute mark, and then you're good to go. It shows you what you should see there. There's a follow-up, though. The other film, the other Star Wars film, I think, it's not that I think that the overall film is spectacular, but there are some really powerful sequences that wrestle with Eastern pantheism and Orthodox Buddhism. And one of them is a speech that Yoda gives to a young Anakin. Now, this is not the small boy Anakin at this point in Episode 3. Anakin is in his early 20s or something like that. He's a young man. And Anakin is struggling with thoughts, memories of his mother, his dead mother. He's struggling with, he doesn't want to admit to Yoda that he is in fact married to Padme Amidala. So he's not saying that to Yoda, but he is expressing concern over over Padme and the fact that he cares so much about her. He is expressing concern, about others who may have come to harm in the past. So Qui-Gon, there are others, right? And the speech that Yoda gives him is quintessential, not only quintessential Yoda, but it's also foundational as an attachment to Eastern monism or Buddhist orthodoxy, because it talks about this whole notion of the bane of human existence being these commitments, these attachments to other people, and Yoda believes that they are compromising. And he gives Anakin this speech about, how it's wrong to feel bad about people who die and pass into eternity and rejoin the Force, right? And so he gives him this speech, and he literally tells Anakin, you're not supposed to miss these people. Attachment, and in the speech he gives the specific warning that attachment leads to the dark side. And I mean, it's almost like a Buddhist sermon being delivered by these characters, by Yoda in particular, in Episode 3 of Star Wars. So that's another thing that I posted. I want you to take a look at that and just kind of wade through it momentarily. And then the other one that I posted that I want you to look at actually is from Avengers Infinity War. And there are some New Age components woven together in a bunch of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films. But I honed in on that one because there's a really interesting sequence where Thanos, right, the arch villain in the last two films, Infinity War and Endgame, where Thanos takes his daughter Gamora, played by Zoe Saldana. He takes Gamora with him to this strange location who has this watcher, this creature that oversees one of the gemstones that Thanos is seeking. And we actually learn, once we see this creature, if you've been watching through the Marvel films, you realize that it is Red Skull, who was banished from Earth and sent via some, rainbow thing all the way to this other planetary system. And so he's overseeing this transition process. Thanos has to kill something that he loves in order to receive this special gemstone. And there's this really critical component in the film where Gamora gives him this brief speech about the universe and what the universe expects from Thanos. And it's just such, it's thoroughly framed in pantheistic thought. Now, in this particular case, it kind of borrows a little bit from monism and a little bit from New Age pantheism and kind of combines them a little bit, but it's still very much pantheistic in nature. And I wanted you to be aware of that one. So those are some of the pop culture elements I posted for you to link to. Now, I do want to start by setting things up for Monday. So I want to remind you, so we have celebrity-styled Buddhism. And the reason I did this is because a lot of those who claim to embrace Buddhism are more than likely, most of them are more specifically aligned with what we would regard as New Age pantheism. And if you're sitting there and you're trying to remember what's the big difference, well, one of the key things is that for New Agers in the West, it's kind of like this this effort to conveniently ignore a lot of the tenets of Orthodox Buddhism that would make their lives more difficult. And what I mean by that is that a lot of us in the West prefer to be very individualistic. A lot of us in the West are seeking out material pleasure as a key way to fill in the gaps in our Western lives. Materialism is running rampant, of course. And the individualistic, even I would go further than that, the narcissistic orientation for a lot of Westerners does not really combine well with Buddhist orthodoxy. And so what is the effort, why is the effort made? The simple conclusion is that the effort to sort of maintain this claim of being a Buddhist or a pantheist can only happen by subscribing to an adjusted position, and that adjustment is the New Age belief system, where individuality is actually conversely almost directly opposite from Orthodox Buddhism, where individuality is prized. And remember, when we went through this back in February, this was a critical point for us, the whole idea that for the New Ager, it's perfectly acceptable to concentrate on the self. And I want you to, if you need to, you should go back and reread our text for the semester and just refresh your memory regarding some of those key comparative differences between Buddhism, Orthodox Buddhism, and New Age philosophy, because that's going to be a focal point for us a little bit on Monday. All right, guys, I know that this segment wasn't intended to be all that long, to be honest with you. I just wanted to offer forth a few reminders about Buddhism. It's obviously represented pretty thoroughly in our culture. I think the films are some of the best ways to identify those elements. And so I wanted to bring those to your attention. Make sure that once you're done watching this, or even in the midst of watching this, you can pause and select those links on Converge and go in there and watch a couple of those film clips. I think they're really good location points for how to identify Buddhist pantheism and New Age pantheism in our culture. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're healthy and well. I hope you are also hopefully having a very affirming and positive outlook on the future, even in the midst of the chaos that we're all living through. I hope you and your families are safe and healthy. I'll be praying to that end. Please be continuing to pray for me and my family. At the moment, I think we're doing okay. My elderly mother is kind of hurt herself the other day, but I think she's going to recover without having to go to a clinic or a hospital, which is something we're trying to avoid right now. So yeah, just be praying for God's deliverance and for healing and for safety and for sparing the world from too much harm from this contagion that has swept across the globe. Hope you're well, and I will reconnect with you guys on Monday the 13th. Have a blessed Easter weekend, Good Friday, and then of course one of the most important things that we celebrate, and that of course is the resurrection. And we're all going to get to do that on Sunday, whether we're going to a church service or not. Most of us will not be, I'm sure, but I think that is something to definitely look forward to. Miss you guys. Hope you're doing well. See you soon.